The massive alien ship hung in space above Earth like a silver moon. Captain Elena Vasquez pressed her face against the small window of the human shuttle and watched the council vessel grow larger as they approached. Her heart beat fast with excitement and fear. After 300 years of dreaming about meeting aliens, humanity was finally going to join the galactic community. The year was 2387, and humans had just figured out how to travel faster than light. It took them only 6 months to meet their first alien neighbors. The Galactic Council had been waiting for them. Ambassador Kethvar of the Zinthari species greeted the human delegation with what looked like a smile. His blue skin gleamed under the ship's lights, and his forearms moved in patterns that the translation device said meant welcome and friendship. He spoke in a voice that sounded like music. "We have watched your species for some time," Kethvar said to the human diplomats. "You have grown much in recent years. We are pleased to invite you into our community of civilized worlds." Elena felt proud as she listened. Humanity had worked so hard to reach this moment. Wars had ended, countries had united, and science had finally unlocked the secrets of space travel. Now they were being welcomed by beings who had traveled the stars for thousands of years. The council chambers were enormous. Representatives from hundreds of different species sat in floating chairs that moved around a central speaking area. Some aliens looked almost human, while others were so strange that Elena could barely understand what she was seeing. There were beings made of crystal, creatures that looked like living gas clouds, and things with too many eyes or no eyes at all. Kethvar guided the humans to a small section marked with Earth's symbol. "Your designated area," he explained. "All new species start here until they prove themselves ready for greater responsibility." Elena noticed that their section was very small compared to the others. The humans were given seats in the back, far from the center where the important aliens sat. But she told herself this was normal. They were new after all. The council leader, an ancient being called Supreme Coordinator Vexthul, spoke to the gathering. His species, the Mordon, had been in space longer than any other. He looked like a giant tree with eyes, and when he spoke, his voice filled the entire chamber. "Today we welcome the humans of Earth into our community," Vexthul announced. "They will be given territory in Sector 7 Alpha, on the outer rim of our space. There they may grow and learn our ways." Elena felt a small disappointment. The outer rim sounded far away from everything important. But Ambassador Chen, the leader of the human group, smiled and thanked the council for their generosity. After the ceremony, Kethvar took the humans on a tour of council space. They visited gleaming cities that floated in the vacuum of space, saw planets where the weather was controlled by machines, and watched ships that could travel between stars in minutes instead of weeks. "This could all be yours someday," Kethvar told them, "if your species proves worthy of advancement." The humans were given 12 star systems to call their own. The systems were far from the center of council space, surrounded by empty regions that the aliens said were too dangerous to explore. But the planets were good for human life, and there were plenty of resources to build a new civilization. Elena became part of the first wave of human colonists. She helped establish New Geneva, a research station on the edge of human space. The work was hard but exciting. Every day brought new discoveries and new hope for humanity's future. For 50 years, humans followed all the council's rules. They stayed in their assigned space, traded only with approved species, and shared their scientific discoveries with council oversight. They built cities, raised families, and slowly spread across their 12 systems. But Elena, now much older and serving as New Geneva's director, began to notice strange things. Council inspectors visited human colonies regularly, but they seemed more interested in counting people than helping with development. Trade agreements always favored the alien species, leaving humans with less profit than they deserved. And whenever human scientists made important discoveries, council representatives would quickly classify the research and take it away. The humans were also curious about their galactic neighbors. They tried to visit other species' worlds, but were always told that such visits required special permits that took years to approve. They asked to participate in joint research projects, but were told they needed more experience first. They, requested better territories closer to major trade routes, but were informed that their current location was perfect for their development level. Dr. Sarah Chen, Elena's niece and a brilliant scientist, was especially frustrated by these limitations. She had spent 20 years studying alien artifacts found on various human worlds, but the Council kept declaring her research sites off-limits. "There's something they don't want us to find," Sarah told Elena one evening as they watched the sunset on New Geneva. "Every time I get close to understanding something important about galactic history, new restrictions appear." Elena had been thinking the same thing for years. The Council's behavior didn't match their friendly words. Humans were supposedly welcome members of the galactic community, but they were treated more like children who couldn't be trusted with anything important. The breaking point came when Sarah discovered ancient ruins on a planet called Kepler 442c. The structures were clearly built by an advanced civilization, but they were old enough to predate the Council itself. When Sarah requested permission to study the ruins, she was told that the planet was now a protected archaeological site and completely forbidden to humans. Protected by whom? Sarah asked the Council representative. "If these ruins are older than your civilization, who decided they needed protection from us?" The alien, a serpentine creature called Silteth, seemed uncomfortable with the question. "The Council protects all ancient sites from contamination by younger species," he said. "This is for the good of galactic heritage." But Sarah was not satisfied with this answer. That night, she made a decision that would change everything for humanity. Using a small, fast ship designed for research missions, she secretly flew to Kepler 442c to investigate the ruins herself. What she found there would shatter every assumption humans had made about their place in the galaxy. Meanwhile, across human space, other people were starting to ask questions too. Admiral Marcus Rodriguez, the commander of humanity's small defense fleet, had been studying Council military movements for years. He noticed that alien warships regularly patrolled the borders of human space, always claiming they were there for protection. But their positions looked more like a blockade than a security measure. Trade Captain Lisa Zhang reported that alien merchants often asked strange questions about human population numbers and military capabilities. Engineer Robert Kim discovered that communication equipment sold to humans by the Council contained hidden monitoring devices. All across the 12 human systems, a growing sense of unease was spreading. The Council's friendship was beginning to look like something else entirely. But none of the humans realized just how much danger they were truly in, or how little time they had left before the Council's true intentions would be revealed. The age of innocence was coming to an end. Soon humanity would learn what it really meant to be a member of the galactic community, and they would discover that their survival depended on secrets they had never imagined and strength they didn't know they possessed. Dr. Sarah Chen landed her research ship on Kepler 442c just as the planet's 3 moons were setting. The ancient ruins stretched across the horizon like a dead city made of black stone and silver metal. Her equipment detected no life signs, but the structures themselves hummed with a strange energy that made her instruments flicker. She had broken a dozen Council laws by coming here alone, but Sarah couldn't ignore her scientific instincts any longer. For 20 years she had watched the Council hide things from humanity. Tonight she would finally get some answers. The main temple rose from the center of the ruins like a twisted spear pointing at the stars. Sarah approached it carefully, her scanner warning her about unknown energy sources deep underground. The entrance was sealed with technology she had never seen before, but her tools managed to cut through after several hours of work. Inside, the temple was filled with crystalline structures that glowed with soft blue light. Sarah realized these were data storage devices, similar to ones the Council used but far more advanced. Her hands shook as she connected her portable computer to the nearest crystal matrix. The download took 3 hours. When it finished, Sarah had obtained the complete historical records of a species called the Architects. As she read through the files, her blood turned cold. The Architects had been the most advanced species in the galaxy 3,000 years ago. They had created technologies that surpassed even the Council's current capabilities. They had also been peaceful, preferring to share their knowledge rather than use it for conquest. The Council had welcomed them warmly, just as they had welcomed humanity. For 50 years, The architects had followed council rules and lived in their assigned territory. They had traded peacefully and shared their discoveries. But as their technology advanced, the council became nervous. Secret documents showed council leaders discussing the architect problem in terms that made Sarah feel sick. Their rate of development exceeds safe parameters, one council report stated. If current trends continue, they will surpass our technological capabilities within 2 centuries. This cannot be allowed. The solution was Protocol 7. Sarah read the documents with growing horror. Protocol 7 was the Council's method for dealing with species that became too advanced or too numerous. First, the target species would be isolated through increased restrictions and regulations. Then their territory would be gradually surrounded by Council military forces under the pretense of protection. Finally, when everything was in place, a manufactured crisis would provide justification for complete sterilization. The architects had been eliminated in a single coordinated strike. Every planet, every ship, every individual had been destroyed in less than 24 hours. The council then claimed that the architects had suffered a tragic accident involving experimental technology that went wrong, but the truth was hidden in these data crystals. The architects had been murdered because they were becoming too successful. Sarah's hands trembled as she accessed more recent files. The crystals contained intercepted council communications from the past 10 years, information that the dying architect, civilization had somehow managed to record before their destruction. The communications were about humanity. Human population growth exceeds predicted models. Read one message between council leaders. Their expansion rate suggests they will outgrow their assigned territory within 30 years. More concerning is their technological adaptation speed, replied another. They reverse engineer our equipment faster than any previously observed species. The human problem requires careful handling, wrote Supreme Coordinator Vexthul himself. They are too numerous for standard containment. We will need to implement Protocol 7 within the next decade. Sarah felt the world spinning around her. Everything made sense now. The restrictions, the monitoring, the isolation, it was all preparation for genocide. The Council wasn't protecting humanity. They were preparing to exterminate them. She copied everything to her ship's computers and launched emergency transmissions to every human colony. The messages were encrypted with codes that only human scientists would recognize, hidden inside routine research reports that wouldn't alert Council monitors. Within days, the terrible truth was spreading through human space like wildfire. Admiral Rodriguez received Sarah's data while inspecting defense installations on New Terra. As he read the files, his face grew dark with anger. For years he had suspected something was wrong with Council behavior. Now he knew exactly how wrong things really were. He immediately activated emergency protocols that most humans didn't even know existed. Since joining the galactic community, humanity had been secretly preparing for the possibility of betrayal. Hidden bases, concealed weapons stockpiles, and covert research programs had been operating for decades under the cover of normal colonial development. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now elderly but still sharp-minded, received the news at her laboratory on New Geneva. She felt a mixture of rage and bitter satisfaction. Her instincts had been correct all along. The Council's friendship had always been a lie, but Elena also felt something else: determination. Humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and countless other disasters. They would survive this too. Across human space, the reaction was swift and unified. Scientists abandoned their official research to work on secret military projects. Engineers began modifying civilian equipment for combat purposes. Diplomats started gathering intelligence on Council military capabilities while maintaining their facade of ignorant cooperation. The most important discovery came from Dr. James Park, a physicist working on Mars. Hidden in Sarah's data was technical information about architect weapons technology. The architects had been working on devices that could manipulate matter at the quantum level, creating effects that the Council's own weapons couldn't defend against. They were building these when the Council attacked them, Park explained to a secret meeting of human leaders. The architects never got to use their ultimate weapons, but we can finish what they started. Meanwhile, Sarah continued her dangerous work on Kepler 442c. Deep in the ruins, she found something that changed everything: an intact architect artificial intelligence. The AI had been dormant for 3,000 years, waiting for someone to discover it. I am Keeper of Memory, the AI announced when Sarah activated it. I have maintained these records in hope that someday, justice would be possible. Keeper of Memory provided Sarah with complete technical specifications for advanced weapons, ships, and defensive systems. More importantly, it gave her detailed information about Council military weaknesses that the architects had discovered before their destruction. The Council believes they are invincible, Keeper of Memory explained. But they have grown lazy after 10,000 years of unchallenged rule. Their security has weaknesses. Their strategies are predictable, and they have never faced an enemy that truly understands warfare. Sarah transmitted everything back to human space, then began the dangerous journey home. But she wasn't the only human making discoveries that would reshape the galaxy. Captain Lisa Zhang had been secretly mapping Council supply routes for years under the cover of trading missions. She now revealed that she had identified critical weaknesses in the alien logistics network. Engineer Robert Kim had been reverse engineering Council technology and found ways to turn their own systems against them. Most importantly, Admiral Rodriguez revealed the existence of Project Lazarus, a massive secret program that had been building hidden military installations throughout the galaxy for the past 30 years. Using advanced stealth technology and careful planning, humans had established bases in over 200 star systems, including several deep within Council space. They think they have us trapped in 12 systems, Rodriguez told the Emergency Council of Human Leaders. But we've been everywhere. We know their weaknesses, their capabilities, and their plans. They're about to learn what it means to fight a species that has spent its entire history in conflict. The Council was still moving their pieces into position for humanity's destruction, confident that they were dealing with a primitive species that would offer only token resistance. They had scheduled Protocol 7 to begin in 6 months, believing they had all the time in the world to prepare. They were wrong. Humanity was no longer the naive species that had stumbled into space 50 years ago. They had learned, adapted, and prepared. And now that they knew the truth about the Council's intentions, they were ready to show the galaxy what humans were really capable of when their survival was at stake. The trap was set, but not the way the Council expected. Soon the hunters would become the hunted, and the galaxy would witness the fury of a species that refused to go quietly into extinction. Admiral Marcus Rodriguez stood in the command center of Station Omega, a massive military base hidden in the dark space between star systems. The facility had been under construction for 30 years, invisible to Council sensors and powered by a captured micro-black hole. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of human assets throughout the galaxy. "Status report," Rodriguez ordered, his voice echoing through the war room. Colonel Sarah Mitchell, his chief intelligence officer, stepped forward with a tablet full of data. "Project Lazarus is fully operational, sir. We have 237 hidden bases active across Council space. Our sleeper agents are in position on every major Council world." Rodriguez nodded grimly. When humanity first joined the galactic community, they had appeared naive and trusting. But humans had learned long ago that survival required preparation for betrayal. While the Council thought they were monitoring a peaceful species, humanity had been building the largest intelligence network in galactic history. "What about our technical capabilities?" Rodriguez asked. Dr. James Park appeared on a communication screen from his secret laboratory on Titan. "We've successfully weaponized architect technology, Admiral. The quantum disruption devices are ready for deployment. Each unit can disintegrate matter at the molecular level across a radius of 50 kilometers. And the stellar manipulation equipment? Functional and tested. We can trigger controlled supernovas in any star system within 6 hours of deployment. The Council has no defense against this technology because they never imagined anyone would be crazy enough to use it." Rodriguez smiled coldly. The Council thought humans were primitive because they still engaged in warfare with each other. What the aliens didn't understand was that constant conflict had made humanity incredibly good at fighting. While Council species had grown soft after millennia of peace, humans had spent their entire history perfecting the art of war. Captain Elena Rodriguez, the Admiral's daughter, and now a commander in the human fleet, reported from her position near the Council core worlds. "Deep reconnaissance is complete, Father. We've mapped every major installation, identified key leadership targets, and infiltrated their command networks. When you give the order, we can cripple their entire government structure in minutes." The plan was audacious in its scope, and terrifying in its implications. For 50 years, humans had been pretending to follow council rules while secretly preparing for this moment. They had studied every species, mapped every star system, and infiltrated every major organization. More importantly, they had learned from the architect's mistake. The architects had been peaceful to the end, never imagining that their friends would betray them. Humanity would not make that error. Dr. Sarah Chen returned from Kepler 442c with Keeper of Memory, safely stored in a portable quantum computer. The architect AI had provided not just weapons technology, but detailed psychological profiles of every council species. The information revealed critical weaknesses that could be exploited. The Zenthari are extremely hierarchical. Keeper of Memory explained to the Human War Council. Remove their leadership, and the entire species becomes paralyzed. The Morden are completely dependent on their technology. Disrupt their computer networks and they cannot function. The Kreshtai are individually powerful but have no concept of coordinated strategy. Rodriguez studied the intelligence reports with fascination. Each council species had evolved during periods of peace and prosperity. They had forgotten how to fight wars because they had never needed to. Humanity, on the other hand, had been forged in the fires of constant conflict. Every human military strategy was based on lessons learned from thousands of years of warfare. The timing was perfect. Council forces were beginning to move toward human space for what they believed would be a routine extermination operation. Supreme Coordinator Vexthal had issued secret orders to military commanders across the galaxy, instructing them to prepare for Protocol 7 implementation, but the Council's communications were no longer secret. Human intelligence operatives had been intercepting and decoding alien transmissions for decades. Rodriguez knew exactly when and how the attack would come. They planned to surround our 12 systems with overwhelming force, Colonel Mitchell reported. 5,000 warships supported by planet-killer weapons and space-based fortresses. They expect the operation to last 72 hours at most. What they don't know, Rodriguez replied, is that we evacuated those systems 6 months ago. Every human colony, every space station, every industrial facility, all moved to hidden locations. They're going to attack empty planets. The evacuation had been a masterpiece of logistics and deception. Using transport ships disguised as trading vessels, humanity had relocated their entire civilization to secret bases scattered throughout the galaxy. The Council's spies reported normal activity in human space because sophisticated holographic projectors were maintaining the illusion of populated worlds. Meanwhile, human military forces were positioning themselves for the largest coordinated strike in galactic history. Unlike the Council's centralized command structure, human forces operated through independent cells that could function without communication with higher command. Each cell had specific targets and the authority to adapt their plans based on local conditions. Agent Maria Santos had been living on the Council capital world of Zenthar Prime for 15 years. Posing as a cultural exchange student, she now activated her hidden arsenal and prepared to eliminate the Council's top leadership during their emergency session. Similar operations were planned for every major Council world. Engineer Robert Kim had spent decades working on Council space stations, always helpful and eager to please. His alien colleagues had no idea that he had been installing hidden explosives and computer viruses throughout their most critical infrastructure. With a single coded transmission, he could cripple the Council's industrial base. Captain Lisa Zhang commanded a fleet of human ships disguised as cargo haulers, positioned along every major trade route in Council space. Her vessels carried quantum disruption weapons capable of destroying entire star systems. The Council's military had never seen these ships as threats, because they appeared to be simple merchant vessels. The human strategy was based on a simple principle: hit everything at once, hit it hard and give the enemy no time to respond. While the Council prepared for a conventional siege of human territory, humanity was positioning itself to destroy the entire galactic government in a single coordinated strike. Rodriguez reviewed the final preparations with cold satisfaction. The Council had made the same mistake that had doomed countless empires throughout human history. They had underestimated their enemy and grown complacent in their power. Keeper of Memory, Rodriguez addressed the architect AI. Your people tried to reason with the Council. They offered friendship and cooperation right up until the end. We're going to try a different approach. I understand, the AI replied. The architects were scientists and philosophers. Humans are warriors. Perhaps it will make the difference. The Council thinks we're just another primitive species that can be easily eliminated. Rodriguez continued. They're about to learn why humanity has survived every extinction event our planet has thrown at us. We don't just endure, we fight back. The final piece of the plan was psychological warfare. Humans had studied Council psychology for decades and understood that their enemy's greatest weakness was their belief in their own superiority. The aliens had never imagined that a younger species could threaten them, much less defeat them. Rodriguez planned to shatter that confidence completely. When the Council declared war on humanity, they expected to face a desperate but ultimately futile resistance. Instead, they would discover that they had been completely infiltrated, thoroughly outmaneuvered and marked for total destruction by an enemy they had never taken seriously. The irony was perfect. The Council's own arrogance and prejudice had blinded them to the trap being prepared around them. They saw humans as primitive barbarians, never realizing that sometimes barbarians were exactly what you needed to bring down a decadent empire. In hidden bases throughout the galaxy, human forces made their final preparations. Weapons were loaded, targets were confirmed, and countdown timers were synchronized. Everything was ready for the moment when the Council would make their greatest mistake, formally declaring war on a species that had been preparing for this battle since the day they first met. Aliens. The storm was about to break, and it would reshape the galaxy forever. Supreme Coordinator Vexthul stood before the assembled Galactic Council, his tree-like form towering over the other delegates. The chamber was filled with representatives from 847 species, all united in their decision to eliminate the human problem once and for all. The time has come to implement Protocol 7, Vexthul announced, his voice carrying the weight of 10,000 years of authority. The human species has exceeded acceptable parameters for development and population growth. For the stability of our galactic community, they must be contained permanently. Ambassador Kethavar of the Zinthari shifted uncomfortably in his floating chair. Supreme Coordinator, perhaps a final warning might be sufficient. The humans have been cooperative for 50 years. Vexthul's eyes glowed with cold light. Cooperation is irrelevant. The architects were also cooperative. The Veiltar were peaceful. The Nixani were devoted to art and philosophy. All were eliminated because they posed a potential threat to galactic stability. The humans are no different. The vote was unanimous, as it always was. No species in the Council had ever voted against Protocol 7 implementation. To do so would risk drawing suspicion about their own loyalty. Admiral Thekmore of the Council Defense Forces received his orders with professional satisfaction. As commander of the largest military force in galactic history, he had overseen 17 Protocol 7 operations. The humans would be his 18th success. Deployment begins immediately, Thekmore announced to his staff. 5,000 warships will surround human space. Planet-killer weapons are authorized for use on all 12 human worlds. Expected duration of operation, 72 hours maximum. The massive Council fleet began moving toward human territory with the confidence of inevitable victory. They had overwhelming numerical superiority, technology advantage, and the element of surprise. What could possibly go wrong? The first sign of trouble came when the fleet reached human space and found it empty. Admiral, reported Captain Silthera from the scout ship Domination, we're detecting no life signs on any human worlds. The colonies appear to be completely abandoned. Thekmore frowned at his command display. Impossible. Our intelligence reports showed normal activity just days ago. Scan again. More detailed scans confirmed the impossible truth. Every human world was deserted. Cities stood empty, space stations were powered down, and industrial facilities were silent. It was as if the entire human population had simply vanished into space. They must have detected our approach and evacuated, suggested Commander Voxtai, a desperate attempt to delay the inevitable. But Thekmore felt a growing unease. In his experience, primitive species didn't have the logistics capability to evacuate billions of people without leaving massive traces. Something was very wrong. The answer came at exactly 14:30 Galactic Standard Time, when human forces revealed themselves across 500 star systems simultaneously. Agent Maria Santos walked into the Council leadership chamber on Zenthar, primed during an emergency session about the empty human worlds. The guards didn't stop her because she had been a familiar presence in the building for 15 years. They only realized something was wrong when she activated the quantum disruption device hidden in her briefcase. The explosion vaporized the entire government complex and everyone in it, including Supreme Coordinator Vexthul and 60% of the Council's senior leadership. Similar attacks occurred on every major Council world within minutes of each other. Captain Lisa Shine commanded her disguised cargo fleet to drop their camouflage and open fire on Council military installations throughout the galaxy. The aliens had never suspected that these innocent merchant vessels carried weapons capable of destroying planets. Shipyards that had been building warships for 1,000 years erupted in nuclear fire. Engineer Robert Kim activated computer viruses that he had been planting in Council systems for decades. Command networks crashed, navigation systems failed, and weapons platforms turned their guns on their own forces. 50 years of patient infiltration paid off in a single devastating moment. But the humans weren't finished. They had studied the architects' records and learned from their mistakes. The architects had fought defensively, trying to protect their territory while negotiating for peace. Humanity chose a different strategy: total offense. Dr. James Park's stellar manipulation devices activated in 15 different star systems, each one home to a major Council military base. The artificial supernovas destroyed everything within light years of their targets, eliminating entire fleets that had taken centuries to build. Admiral Rodriguez coordinated the attack from Station Omega, watching as decades of preparation bore fruit. "Status report," he demanded. "Council command structure is completely disrupted," reported Colonel Mitchell. "Their military response is chaotic and uncoordinated. Estimated enemy losses exceed 60% and climbing." "What about their remaining forces?" Captain Elena Rodriguez answered from her position near the Council core worlds. "Scattered and demoralized. Many ships are surrendering without engaging. Others are fleeing to deep space. Organized resistance has collapsed. The speed of the human victory was breathtaking. Within 6 hours of the first strike, the Galactic Council had ceased to exist as a functioning government. Species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia found their homeworlds burning and their fleets destroyed. But Admiral Thekmore was still alive, trapped in human space with the remnants of his invasion fleet. He tried desperately to re-establish communication with Council Command, only to discover that there was no Council left to contact. "This is impossible," he whispered to his staff. "They're a primitive species. They don't have this kind of military capability." Commander Voxtai studied the tactical displays with growing horror. "Admiral, they've been planning this for decades. Every move we made, every strategy we developed, they were ready for all of it." Thekmore realized the terrible truth. The humans hadn't been lucky or desperate. They had been patient, intelligent, and utterly ruthless. While the Council had grown complacent in their power, humanity had been studying their enemies and preparing for war. The final blow came when human forces revealed their ultimate weapon. Keeper of Memory, the Architect AI, broadcasted a message to every surviving Council ship simultaneously. "I am the last remnant of the Architect civilization," the AI announced. "For 3,000 years I have waited for this moment of justice. The species you are fighting possesses our complete technological database. They know every weakness you have. Surrender now, or share the fate of those who created Protocol 7. The psychological impact was devastating. Suddenly, every surviving Council member realized that they were facing not just humans, but the accumulated knowledge and fury of every species the Council had ever destroyed. The humans had become the instrument of justice for millennia of genocide. Mass surrenders began immediately. Entire fleets powered down their weapons and transmitted surrender codes. Species that had participated in dozens of Protocol 7 operations now begged for mercy from the primitive barbarians they had planned to exterminate. Admiral Thekmore was among the last to surrender. As human ships surrounded his flagship, he finally understood the magnitude of the Council's mistake. They had assumed that because humans were young, they were also weak. They had never considered that a species forged by constant warfare might be exactly what was needed to challenge galactic tyranny. The war that was supposed to last 72 hours was over in 17 days. But it hadn't been a war at all, it had been an execution. The Galactic Council's 10,000-year reign of terror had ended not with a desperate last stand, but with surgical precision applied by a species that understood warfare better than any other in the galaxy. Of the 847 species that had comprised the Council, 731 were completely extinct. The remaining 116 existed only as scattered survivors, forever changed by witnessing what happened when humanity finally revealed its true nature. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Never underestimate a species that has spent its entire existence learning how to fight for survival, and never threaten the extinction of beings who view warfare not as a last resort, but as an art form perfected over millions of years of evolution. The age of the Galactic Council was over. The age of humanity had begun. Admiral Marcus Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of the human command ship Victory, looking out at the ruins of Zenthar Prime. The former capital of the Galactic Council was now a crater-filled wasteland, its gleaming towers reduced to radioactive debris. Around the dead planet, hundreds of human ships maintained patrol patterns, ensuring that the galaxy's new reality was clear to all observers. The war was over. After 17 days of coordinated strikes, the Galactic Council no longer existed. Of the 847 species that had once ruled the galaxy, only 116 survived as scattered remnants hiding on remote worlds. The rest had been completely eliminated, wiped from existence with the same ruthless efficiency they had once applied to younger species. Rodriguez felt no satisfaction in the victory, only a grim sense of completion. Humanity had not wanted this war, but when faced with extinction, they had responded with the full fury of a species that had never learned how to surrender. "Admiral," came a voice behind him. Rodriguez turned to see Dr. Sarah Chen approaching, her face showing the exhaustion of someone who had witnessed too much death in too short a time. "The survivor delegations are requesting an audience." Rodriguez nodded. For the past week, representatives from the remaining council species had been arriving at the human fleet, carrying white flags of surrender and desperate pleas for mercy. They wanted to know what humanity planned to do with its newfound power over the galaxy. The meeting took place in the Victory's main conference room, a space designed for human military briefings rather than diplomatic negotiations. Rodriguez deliberately chose this setting to emphasize that this was not a discussion between equals. Humanity now held absolute power, and everyone needed to understand that fact. 16 alien delegates sat around the conference table, representing the scattered survivors of galactic civilization. They came from species that had once considered themselves superior to all others, but now looked broken and afraid. Some trembled visibly, others stared at the floor, and a few watched Rodriguez with expressions of desperate hope. Ambassador Kethvar of the Zenthari was among the survivors, his blue skin now pale with fear. "Admiral Rodriguez," he began, his voice shaking, "we come to discuss terms of surrender and to request mercy for our peoples." Rodriguez studied the aliens with cold eyes. These beings had voted unanimously to exterminate humanity just weeks ago. They had participated in the genocide of hundreds of species over the millennia. They deserved no mercy, and they knew it. "You want to discuss terms?" Rodriguez asked quietly. "Very well. Here are humanity's terms. Complete and immediate disarmament of all remaining military forces, full disclosure of all technological capabilities, unrestricted access to all historical records of Council activities, and absolute compliance with any future human directives." The delegates looked at each other with obvious distress. Ambassador Veltara of the crystalline Sylveth spoke up nervously. "Admiral, surely there is room for negotiation. Our species have much to offer in terms of scientific knowledge and cultural exchange." Rodriguez's expression didn't change. "Your species offered the same things to the architects before you murdered them. You provided the same promises to the Veltar before they were exterminated. Why should humanity trust you when you have proven that your promises mean nothing?" The silence that followed was deafening. Every alien in the room knew that Rodriguez was right. They had no moral authority, no leverage, and no reason to expect mercy from a species they had planned to eliminate. But then something unexpected happened. Keeper of Memory, the architect AI that had been instrumental in humanity's victory, spoke through the room's communication system. "Admiral Rodriguez," the AI said, its synthesized voice carrying echoes of ancient wisdom. "May I address the assembly?" Rodriguez nodded, curious about what the last remnant of the architect civilization would say to their killers. "I have waited 3,000 years for justice," Keeper of Memory continued. I have dreamed of this moment when those who destroyed my people would face the consequences of their actions. But now that it has arrived, I find myself thinking not of revenge but of what my people would have wanted. The AI paused as if processing complex emotions. The architects believed in the possibility of genuine cooperation between species. They died because they trusted too much, but they never abandoned their hope for a better galaxy. If they could speak now, I believe they would ask not for vengeance, but for the chance to build something better from the ruins of the old order. Rodriguez considered the AI's words carefully. Humanity had the power to rule the galaxy through fear, just as the Council had done. But did they want to become the very thing they had fought to destroy? Captain Elena Rodriguez entered the conference room at that moment, carrying a data tablet with the latest reports from across the galaxy. "Father," she said quietly, "we're receiving transmissions from survivor populations throughout Council space. They're thanking us." Rodriguez looked up in surprise. "Thanking us?" "For freeing them from the Council's oppression," Elena explained. "It seems we weren't the only species that was being monitored and controlled. Hundreds of supposedly allied species were actually living under constant surveillance and threat. They see us as liberators, not conquerors." This revelation changed everything. Rodriguez had assumed that humanity was alone in its opposition to the Council, but apparently many other species had been waiting for someone strong enough to challenge the galactic government. The Council's rule had been based on fear and intimidation, not genuine cooperation. Dr. Sarah Chen spoke up from her position near the conference table. "Admiral, I've been studying the survivor populations. Most of them are scientists, artists and philosophers, the peaceful members of their species who never supported protocol. 7. The warlike elements were eliminated in our first strikes." Rodriguez realized that humanity now faced a choice that would define their future and the future of the galaxy. They could become the new tyrants ruling through fear as the Council had done, or they could try to build something better, something worthy of the sacrifice that had brought them to this moment. "Keeper of memory," Rodriguez said finally, "what would the architects have done in our position?" "They would have chosen hope over fear," the AI replied immediately. "They would have tried to create a civilization based on genuine cooperation rather than forced compliance. They would have given other species the chance to prove they could be better than their past actions." Rodriguez looked around the room at the assembled aliens. These beings had been part of a system that had committed genocide for 10,000 years. But they were also the survivors, the ones who had been left alive because humanity's strikes had been precise rather than vindictive. "You want mercy?" Rodriguez asked the delegates. "Then you'll have to earn it. We're going to try something that has never existed in galactic history. A true democracy where all species have equal voice and equal rights. But this system will have protections built into it to prevent another council from ever arising." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "Humanity will maintain military superiority to ensure that no species can ever again threaten another with extinction. But we won't rule through fear. Instead, we'll create a federation where cooperation is rewarded and aggression is swiftly punished." Ambassador Kethvar spoke hesitantly. What would membership in this federation require?" "Complete transparency in all scientific and military activities," Rodriguez replied. "Absolute prohibition on weapons of mass destruction. Democratic representation based on population, rather than technological advancement. And most importantly, a binding oath to never again participate in genocide." The aliens looked at each other with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. This was far better than they had expected, but also far different from anything they had ever experienced. Dr. Chen added, "We'll also be establishing memorial worlds for every species the Council destroyed. The history of their genocides will be preserved and taught to ensure that such atrocities never happen again." Over the following months, the human commonwealth took shape. Species that had survived the Council's fall were invited to join, but only after proving their commitment to the new order's principles. Worlds were rebuilt, technologies were shared, and for the first time in galactic history, younger species were welcomed as equals rather than potential threats. Rodriguez eventually stepped down as military commander to become the first president of the Galactic Commonwealth. His inaugural address was broadcast to every inhabited world in the galaxy. "We did not destroy the Council to become them," he said, standing before representatives from dozens of species. We destroyed them to ensure that no power would ever again have the ability to decide which species deserve to exist. The galaxy belongs to all of us, and we will defend that principle with our lives. The Commonwealth was not perfect. There were disputes, cultural conflicts, and occasional threats from species that had not yet learned the lessons of the Council's fall. But humanity's overwhelming military superiority, combined with their genuine commitment to equality and justice, created a stability that the galaxy had never known.